morning. You're watching The Big Story with Haryanto Diman. I'm Olivia Quay. Still confused about what you can and cannot do when the circuit breaker ends on June the 2nd? We answer the most asked questions later in the show on askST.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the Straits Times channel if you haven't already done so.
The Health Ministry has confirmed today that the number of COVID-19 cases for Singaporeans and permanent residents has gone up significantly. 13 new cases today is an increase of about 5.5 times from the past week. The moving 7-day average was at a low with 2.29 cases.
The ministry said 7 of these local cases were picked up from its active surveillance and screening of nursing home residents and preschool staff. 4 are part of a family cluster linked to a dormitory, and epidemiological investigations are ongoing for the remaining 2 cases.
In total, there are 448 new COVID-19 cases today, with the majority coming from foreign worker dormitories. MOE will release more details later this evening. The total number of cases in Singapore now stands at 29,812.
School will be back in session in less than 2 weeks on June 2nd. On the primary and secondary school level, Education Minister Ong Ye Kung said on Tuesday that only graduating students in primary 6 as well as secondary 4 and 5 will attend school daily.
The remaining cohorts will rotate between home-based learning and classes in school on a weekly basis. So let's bring in our education correspondent, Amelia Teng, to discuss this further. Amelia, but before schools closed last month, the data then showed that schools aren't hotspots for COVID-19. So why do you think MOE decided to implement this rotation versus having all students in school return at once?
Yeah, so I think MOE is trying to stagger the return of students by cohorts to be safer, to be more careful, so that we don't go from like near zero to having a sudden influx of all students back in school at one shot. Similar to how many other countries in the world are also doing it. The UK, for instance, they're also planning for schools to reopen gradually by ages in the same way. So it makes sense for MOE to be a bit more cautious in this manner, even though schools were not hotspots to begin with. It's also to give schools and teachers, the students, some time to adjust to all the safe distancing measures that they need to follow. So in a sense, even though school has reopened, will reopen, life is not exactly the same for all of them. They all have to wear like face shields or masks throughout the day. The recess, arrival, dismissal times will all be also staggered, and there'll be spaced sittings in classrooms. So it's not really the same. It might take a while for people to adjust. So the thing is that everyone has to get used to for some time before all the students come back, perhaps in a few weeks after the weekly rotations.
Right. And what were parents' top concerns during the circuit breaker? And do you think they'll be satisfied with the measures in place during phase 1?
I think we asked a lot of parents, especially those who are working parents, having to manage children's home-based learning, the curriculum, and fulfilling work commitments was one of the top challenges. And if we have more than one child, it can be even more difficult. So besides the technical difficulties of remote learning, a lot of them also said that home-based learning was not as effective as face-to-face learning. There's only so much you can convey through a screen. And nothing can replace classroom teaching. So the graduating cohorts at the P6 Sec 4 were most worried about falling behind and how it would affect this So I think most parents are actually very happy that school will reopen as long as precautions are in place and assured that the kids are safe in school so that they can have some time to work uninterrupted.
Right, Emilia, given the timeline of the 3 phases that were announced on Tuesday, what's the likelihood, you think, of schools being able to reopen fully for the end-of-year exams?
I think they're still waiting for more updates as to when schools can have all students back. Possibly, I think MOE said in a few weeks' time, weekly rotation start. But this will, of course, be in tandem with the easing of the circuit breaker measures, the safe distancing measures for the rest of Singapore. And we'll have to take the cue from the task force, which is handling COVID. But regardless, I think the end of year national exams will have to continue. Students will take it whether or not schools will be open by then, because these are necessary placement exams for the students' next phase of education. So it will go on regardless whether schools reopen.
Right. Amelia, let's shift our focus a bit to children in preschools. Now, Social and Family Development Minister Desmond Lee said they'll return in batches instead of all at once. Kindergarten 1 and 2 will resume on June 2nd, Nursery and 1 and 2 on June 8th, then Infant Care and Playgroup on June 10th. There are only a few days as opposed to a couple of weeks between each batch's return. What's the rationale there, you think?
I think similar to the rest of the mainstream schools is also to try and ease the transition back to preschool, give them some time and some space to adjust to the changes. But at the same time, I think for preschools, the period for the children to return to school cannot be too prolonged. Because at this age, the kids are young and they need childcare support. And as Singapore exits the circuit breaker and you have more employees, workers going back to workplaces, those parents who are working might need to work on site, go back to the offices, or to pick up the pace of work a little bit more, even though they're at home. So having the childcare support that's in place will be needed for many families. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's up to each parent whether you want to send your child back to school, and this is just to ensure that the support is available if you need it.
Well, good points there, Amelia. Thank you so much. We'll check in again, I'm sure, when schools reopen on June the 2nd. We were speaking with the Straits Times education correspondent, Amelia Teng.
In other news, the Ministry of Manpower said today that foreign domestic workers should still stay home on their rest days during the first phase of Singapore's reopening. Like the rest of the community, they shouldn't meet up with friends or gather in public spaces. They can still go out to run essential errands and buy meals. However, they must return home immediately after. MOM said helpers should still be given their weekly rest days, during which they shouldn't be asked to work. Compensation must be given when they do.
According to the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, the communal prayer calls for Hari Raya Aidilfitri this Sunday, as well as the special sermon that day, will not be broadcast on TV. This under guidelines by the Infocom Media Development Authority, which doesn't allow religious content on free-to-air channels here. Members of the Malay Muslim community had expressed concern about why the prayer calls or takbir will be only broadcast on radio and live streamed online and not on local Malay TV channel Surya.
From tomorrow, people and organizations can send in videos, photographs and journal entries capturing their lives during the COVID-19 pandemic to the National Library Board. This is part of NLB and the National Museum of Singapore's efforts to archive the everyday impact of the coronavirus on society. The public can submit their entries through NLB's website until the end of the year. For global headlines, let's go to Dylan Ang.
Thanks, guys. The World Health Organization yesterday registered its highest number of new COVID-19 infections since the virus broke out in December. More than 106,000 new cases were recorded in the past 24 hours. The WHO also expressed concern about the rising number of new cases in poorer countries. Come June 1st, anyone entering Malaysia will have to agree to pay for his mandatory quarantine before making the trip. Under the new policy, Malaysians would pay half the cost of quarantine services, while non-citizens, including spouses and family members of Malaysian citizens, have to bear the full cost. The full charges are expected to be 150 ringgit or 48.75 Singapore dollars per day. Travellers can sign the letter of undertaking at Malaysian embassies and high commissions. And could this be the end of touching lift buttons? In an effort to reduce the possible spread of COVID-19 and give customers more peace of mind, a shopping mall in Thailand has swapped lift buttons for foot pedals.
Well, it's great, convenient and it's safe. instead of having to press the elevator buttons, which may be carrying germs.
That's all for our global updates. Back to you.
Thanks, Dylan. Now, the recent announcement on how Singapore will exit the circuit breaker come June 1st have left many with questions on what we can or cannot do and what is allowed or not allowed subsequently. The Straits Times irregular askST column gathered these questions that people have asked, and we have journalist Yuen Sin to answer some of these burning questions. For a start, Yuen Sin, when you looked through the questions that were sent to the askST column, what were the issues that people were most concerned about?
Yeah, so I think we got many questions from readers, right, who were anxious to know how life would change for them after the circuit breaker. So among them, we had questions such as, whether bubble tea shops will open, whether they need to go back to the office, whether the cleaner or the aircon man can go into the houses, whether they can meet their friends, and so on. So a bunch of questions about all different, aspects of life.
Let's try to answer a few of the most pressing questions. Post-circuit breaker, can I start renovations on my new home, for example?
Yeah, actually that's quite a tricky question because renovation work, even home renovation work, is considered part of construction work. And as we know, the transmission of the virus in the construction sector has been very high over the past few months, right? So actually all construction work will need to get approval from the Building and Construction Authority before they can restart work. And in order to get approval, it also depends on many factors such as whether your workers have been tested for COVID and so on. And I think for a start, they will want to prioritize works that have been suspended. So they were already ongoing before the circuit breaker, right? And then they had to be stopped because of the circuit breaker. And I think subsequently they may look at new renovation works, but that might, I think, take a while longer than the suspended works.
Right. Now on to the next one. Very important questions because 2 months in already. Will I be able to get a facial, thread my eyebrows, or go for a manicure from June 2nd?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that we all want to know, right? But unfortunately, I think we all have to wait a bit longer before we can go for such beauty services. They will not be able to resume after June 2nd. So beauty salons may continue to sell products online and deliver them to customers. But the good news is that at least you can go to the hairdresser and you can get the full range of hairdressing services such as coloring and perming.
Well, another burning question the public has asked. Can I visit public gyms, sports and recreational facilities after June the 1st?
Yeah, I think for that, Sports SG has yet to issue an advisory on what will happen after the June 2nd. But I think for now we know that private gyms will be closed and swimming pools will remain closed. And in HDB estates, right, barbecue pits, badminton courts, playgrounds, all this will not be reopening. And I think it is very likely that we will only be able to see such sports and recreational facilities reopen in phase 2. Which could take at least 4 weeks from June 2nd.
How about facilities in private estates, Yuen Sin?
Yeah, so I think facilities in private estates such as pools or tennis courts, this would likely not be able to reopen so soon as well. I think we'll all have to wait until the second phase.
Right. Well, thank you so much to Yuen Sin for clarifying some of the things we can and cannot do from June the 2nd when Singapore exits the circuit breaker and enters the first phase of reopening its economy.
A more detailed list is in the description below if you're watching us on YouTube. If you have any other questions, send them to askst@sph.com.sg. Now let's go back to Dylan for what's also in the news.
Minister for Trade and Industry Chan Chun Sing said that there's not much time left for the government to hold the upcoming general election. He added that it's because Parliament will be dissolved in January, months ahead of the April deadline. The law states that Parliament has to be dissolved 5 years after the first sitting for this term of government. Astronomers have, for the very first time, directly witnessed a baby planet being born. The young planet is forming around a star called Ab Aurigae, which is about 2.4 times the mass of the Sun and located in our Milky Way galaxy 520 light-years from Earth. Actors Julia Roberts and Hugh Jackman are among celebrities turning over their social media accounts to health experts in order for them to share facts and promote a science-driven approach to fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. Called Pass the Mic, the initiative will also feature frontline workers with a focus on data, science and facts. Roberts kicked off the project yesterday by interviewing Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the US National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
So now talk to me about people in developing countries.
So this gets to a fundamental problem that we have to deal with, and that is the extraordinary health disparities in the developing world.
Many of the participating celebrities have a wide social media footprint. For example, Roberts, Jackman and Stranger Things star Millie Bobby Brown have a combined total of about 71 million followers on Instagram alone. I'm Dylan Ang, back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Dylan. And those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.